Now we're going to learn about quadratic equations. We're going to talk about right now complete quadratic equations and incomplete quadratic equations. Complete quadratic equations are algebraic equations that have an exponent 2 and a 1 exponent. Okay, they have both of them. A variable with a 2 exponent and a variable with a 1 exponent. That equals a complete quadratic equation. So for it to be a complete quadratic equation, it has to have a variable with a 2 exponent and a variable with a 1 exponent. And when you see that, you know you have a complete quadratic equation. There are also incomplete quadratic equations. An incomplete quadratic equation is an equation that only has a variable with a 2 exponent. Okay? You notice there's no x variable with a 1 exponent. There's only an x variable with a 2 exponent, and that's considered an incomplete quadratic equation. These two equations, even though they look different, are actually the same. Let me show you. If I subtract 9 from this side, I get 0, right? But what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So x squared minus 9, because I subtracted 9, minus 9 equals 0. So you see how this one looks like this one now? And I can make this one look like this one. Watch. I'm going to get rid of this 9. I'm going to add 9. But what I do to one side, I have to do to the other, so I'm going to add 9 over here. These 9s cancel out, because minus 9 plus 9 is 0, so I get x squared equals 0 plus 9, which is 9. See? Now it looks like this. So an incomplete quadratic equation has a variable with an exponent of 2, but does not have a variable with an exponent of 1. That's how you know the difference. Okay, so let's look at these equations and figure out if they're complete quadratic equations or incomplete quadratic equations. Remember, I just told you that a complete quadratic equation has a variable with a 2 exponent and a variable with a 1 exponent. An incomplete quadratic equation has a variable with only a 2 exponent. So with that in mind, is this a complete quadratic equation or an incomplete quadratic equation? Well, how many variables do we have? We only have 1, right? And what's the exponent? 2. So an equation with only 1 variable and an exponent of 2 is an incomplete equation. Okay? Here we've got 2 variables. One of them has an exponent of 2 and one of them has an exponent of 1. This is considered a complete quadratic equation. Okay. How many variables does this one have? How many variables does this one have? Has 2, right? 1, 2, x and x, has a 2 exponent and a 1 exponent, just like the top one. So is this a complete or an incomplete? Complete, because it's exactly like the top one. See, the top one has a variable with a 2 exponent and a variable with a 1 exponent, and that's what makes a quadratic equation a complete quadratic equation. Here we have an equation with only 1 variable and only a 2 exponent, only 1. These two look different, right? Because this one has 2 variables, one with a 2 exponent and one with a 1 exponent. This one only has 1 variable, only with a 2 exponent. That's what makes this one an incomplete. because it only has one variable with a 2 exponent. Whenever you have an equation with one variable and a 2 exponent and nothing else, just numbers, then it's considered an incomplete.